All right, we've got more breaking 49ers news, and this is of the financial sense, and this is going to tie back into all the big contracts they signed this offseason. And yes, a potential trade to help offset the loss of Nick Bosa. But you remember back in May when we were talking so much about the 49ers selling a percentage of the team to raise money? Well, they have apparently reached agreement to raise even more money. Another 3.2% minority stake. This is going to be purchased by somebody named Pete Bridger Jr. of the Fortress Investment Group. 3.2% of the same valuation that the 49ers set back in May is about $272 million. The valuation of about $8.5 to $8.6 billion. So San Francisco has now raised over $800 million over the course of just the past 4 or 5 months. Jed York deciding to go to the outside investment route, the minority stakeholder route for the 49ers, and it is bringing in quite a bit of cash for San Francisco. So, I mean, this is one of those things where you look at the situation that the 49ers are in right now with their salary cap. They've spent the second most money out of any team in the NFL this season, in the season where a lot of the media is trying to say that it's been an offseason of restraint. Well, it's hard for me to classify it in an offseason of restraint as an honest person covering this team when they've paid Brock Purdy massive money, over $50 million a year, when they've paid George Kittle a new contract, when they extended Fred Warner to the league's richest contract for a linebacker 2 years before his contract is due. The 49ers have spent well over $300 million in cash this year on their payroll. On top of that, when we want to talk about this Nick Bosa situation for San Francisco, they, for this contract, which was awarded in 2023 to Nick Bosa and to every other major contract that the 49ers have given out over the course of the past several seasons, they have taken out pricey insurance policies so that in case an injury happens, they preserve part of their salary cap situation. So the really cheap teams, they don't pay for insurance because they don't care about their cap situation. They just want to go out there and spend enough money to put a team on the field so they can collect the paychecks from the TV revenue share and from the gate admission at their stadium, which with football, since you only host 8 or 9 games a year, it's not that hard to sell all of them out. But the teams who really, really are committed to winning, who want to spend big money, are the ones who buy this insurance, and they buy it in droves. Guess who buys the most insurance policies in the entire NFL? The Philadelphia Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champions, and the San Francisco 49ers, who have spent the most money on players ever since Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch took over. So anyway, when you want to talk about the business aspect of things, any chance that you have to raise capital, to raise money, while retaining team control. And in the case of Jed York, his family is still the primary owner of the 49ers, but they've sold now close to 10% of the team once this deal to Pete Bridger Jr. goes through. They have raised nearly $1 billion at the valuation that they're at. They're not the most valuable franchise at that valuation in American professional sports, but they're very near the top. I think Dallas is still number one at like 10 or 11 billion, and the 49ers valued at 8.5 or 8.6 billion dollars. So when you're wondering, okay, how do they afford this kind of stuff? How can they put the cash up front for these players? How can they have enough for these insurance policies? Because they're not cheap. For Nick Bosa, the insurance policy bought the 49ers $7 million of rebate cap space that they're going to get in 2026. So under the salary cap, which is a fixed limit, it's tough to work with the salary cap. It's definitely destroyed teams before. It's destroyed the 49ers of the late 1990s. Every million counts. And I'm going to illustrate right now how the $7 million that the 49ers were able to get through the Nick Bosa insurance is on the table to help them build this team moving forward, even potentially absorb a new contract. This is up on the San Francisco Standard. Finally, some good injury news for the 49ers. Brock Purdy is on track to return Sunday. So I was at practice today, and we're going to get to the financial stuff here in a bit. But as you know, I like to cover all the news. I was at practice today, and I noticed that Brock Purdy was a whole heck of a lot more involved than he was last week. He was practicing last week. Today was just like last week, was officially classified as limited for Brock Purdy. But when you're actually there, when you're actually paying attention, and you see what he's doing out there on the practice field, you see the level of participation, you see the demeanor, the mood, you know what you do from behind the scenes. I can tell you that things are pointing in a good direction with Brock Purdy. And if you don't want to believe me, then I'll remind you that I was correct about Christian McCaffrey. I was correct about Trent Williams. Every single 49ers injury situation this year, we've actually gotten correct on this channel. So I think that we've established a good track record of predictable success, if you will, when it comes to who the 49ers are playing and who they're not. And I think the 49ers have not been shy about letting some of the hints out for Brock Purdy and his availability against Jacksonville. And this is going to be a really, really interesting matchup for Purdy and the 49ers offense, which is still looking to find its sea legs when it comes to delivering explosive plays. They're going to get DeMarcus Robinson back. That's huge for the 49ers. They might get Jawan Jennings back this week. So all of a sudden, you're looking at Ricky Pearsall, DeMarcus Robinson, Jawan Jennings. Ricky's okay, by the way. He's going to play on Sunday. So you're looking at, I think, a very solid receiving trio. Kendrick Bourne can even slide down to your number 4, although DeMarcus is probably going to have to work into the mix. So we probably would expect DeMarcus Robinson to be San Francisco's number 4 to begin before he works. He's got to get his sea legs back. He's got to get into game shape. And it's a good thing the 49ers now have a little bit more depth. That is assuming Jawan Jennings can play this week. But when you look at Jacksonville's defense, this is a sound unit that leads the NFL with 7 interceptions. They can rush the passer coming off the edge with Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker. They've got Eric Armstead, who could rush on the inside or kick out to the edge. Armstead's going to be very motivated in this football game. Kyle Shanahan has a lot of respect for the way that Jacksonville coordinates its defense and calls its plays. And I think that if you just had to diagnose a really, really challenging matchup for the 49ers right now, if you had to say, okay, what would press this 49ers team strength on strength, I think that this Jacksonville team might do it better than any other team in the league because they're so strong off the edge, but they're no chumps in the middle. Right? Eric Armstead can really get after it in the middle as a defensive tackle. But the 49ers' strength along the offensive line is the tackle position with Trent Williams and Colton McKivitz playing really good football this year. They're going to be pushed in this game by Trayvon Walker and by Josh Hines-Allen. It's going to be strength on strength at that tackle spot. And then Brock Purdy's mobility, if he does indeed play, is going to be tested by the fact that this Jacksonville team can collapse the pocket, can generate pressure, and the 49ers gave up quite a bit of pressure right up the middle last week. It was the interior line that struggled for the 49ers. So Purdy's going to have to show off his movement in this game. Purdy's going to have to show that he can take care of the football in this game. Jacksonville, again, league-leading 7 interceptions. And just as Nick Bosa exits stage left, Brock Purdy should be ready to return. And I think symbolically that passing of the torch is really important to remember because in the big picture, the 49ers defense is definitely taking a hit here without Bosa. The offense, which is ranked number 13 and number 14 in EPA so far this year, they are the ones who are going to have to pick up a lot of this slack moving forward. My theory for the 49ers this year, as far as the math goes, for them to be able to deliver a productive run moving into January, potentially even beyond, is to maintain a defense in the top half of the league rankings with an offense in the top 5. I'll say this over and over. 3 of the last 7 Super Bowl winners have not had top 10 defenses. So they could be okay without Nick Bosa, but Brock Purdy, the man up on your screen, scheduled to return this week for San Francisco, he's going to have to lead this offense to new heights compared to where it's been over the first 3 weeks. And we know that Brock Purdy can do this because he has done this before. The 49ers just need to get that full arsenal of weapons there because any offense that's going to be finishing in the top 5 of the league rankings generally has a good bill of health or at least weapons at every single position. So let's talk about the salary cap now, since this is the big money 49ers update. I can get this open on the screen, get my salary cap sheet out there. $8.5 or $8.6 billion valuation for the 49ers, which tells us that this is one of the most valuable franchises in American sports, in the world, I would say. It helps illustrate how and why the 49ers have been so comfortable spending so much money on their players. They've been so aggressive on the trade market year after year, really. There's only been one season under Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch where the 49ers have not made a trade. Well, this year, they might be cornered into making a trade. If they go 4-0 and then 5-0, who knows what's going to happen over the course of the next 10 days or so, games against Jacksonville and then games against the Rams, I guess, over the next 8 days. It's Wednesday. Next Thursday is when they're going to be down at SoFi Stadium. But if this team continues rolling here early in the season, finding ways to win, it might be something that the front office owes the locker room and owes itself to make an expenditure to help replace Nick Bosa. Right now, the 49ers are in fact-finding mode, as they should be, because teams aren't even willing to sell right now. This is week 3 going on to week 4. 49ers need to see what they have at that edge rusher position in-house. But as September turns to October and October turns to November, that deadline is going to start looming closer and closer on November 5th. And teams are going to become sellers. And teams like the 49ers may intensify in their appetite to buy. And when we talk about that, we have to discuss the 49ers' really tight salary cap situation. So to illustrate, this is the situation this year. I keep very diligent track of it. This is up to date. We're going to have to move Nick Bosa to IR, though, so that hasn't officially happened yet, which is why I haven't done it on this sheet. He's got a $20.4 million salary cap hit this year. $32.3 million is what the 49ers have available to spend in 2025. However, whatever they don't spend is going to carry over into 2026. They need a lot of money in 2026 because they've got a lot of expenditures in 2026. In fact, I can even go to the over the cap page here right now and tell you how much money the 49ers have committed to player salaries in that 2026 season. Here in 2025, as you can see the space in 2025 up on your screen. For 2026, the 49ers have $281.6 million in total liabilities across only 43 players. So they still have to fill out an entire 53-man roster. They have to pay 90 for that whole season, but only some are going to count against the salary cap. Either way, the 49ers expenditures for 2026 are rather large. And it's because a lot of these hits that they have this year that are relatively small, like Brock Purdy's for $9.1 million, Christian McCaffrey for $8.4 million, those are going to get much larger because they've deferred the money into the future. So what you see here, this $32.35 million that is highlighted in blue, the 49ers are going to need to preserve as much of that as possible so that it carries over to help pay the bills in 2026. That's why they just can't go out and spend $30 million right now. They're set up to carry money over. So look at Bosa. He's $20.43 million. The 49ers are going to get $7 million of that back thanks to the salary cap insurance policy that they took out. So they're the opposite of cheap because they're actually taking out insurance so they can help their salary cap situation in case of injuries like this. So just for the sake of math, let's move Nick Bosa's salary cap hit down to $13 million. It's not going to quite work this way. This is simplifying it, but same end result. Take a look at $32.35 million. Keep your eyes on the blue cell right now. Moves the 49ers room up to $40 million this year. So say that the threshold line, and we're not exactly sure where it is, but say that the threshold line for Parag Marathe and the 49ers cap guys this year, John Lynch obviously being part of the decision-making crew, say that the threshold line is $30 million. Say that they decide that $30 million is what they have to carry over to be sustainable from 2025 to 2026. That would limit them to only acquiring a player who commands a $2 million salary right now. There's not a lot of edge rushers who are only owed $2 million who are impact players in this National Football League. However, if you move this to the rebate they're going to get from the salary cap insurance to 13 million for Nick Bosa, all of a sudden that balloons up to 40 million. If that threshold is 30 million, now the 49ers have 10 million to spend. This is a very, very rudimentary and simple way of explaining things, but you'll see how this all makes sense when we take a look at Trey Hendrickson's contract. So we're going to go to Trey Hendrickson right now on Over the Cap. And we're going to start to talk about prorations and how base salary actually becomes cheaper as weeks pass because the Bengals are paying 1/17 of Trey Hendrickson's base salary on a week-by-week basis. All right, so I'm opening up Trey Hendrickson contract details right now. This is on Over the Cap. I'm going to toss this up onto the screen. You just have to give me 1 second as I get this ready. I rushed home today to give you guys a good show about the 49ers financial situation, so we didn't have some of the graphics set to go. But here we go. Trey Hendrickson, Over the Cap. This is the contract that he signed to stay with Cincinnati this year. It was 1 year, $29 million. Now, the signing bonus on that contract was $15.6 million. You can see the signing bonus here at the very bottom for Trey Hendrickson. That's good news in case the Bengals do decide to trade him. Now, again, we're very far away from that point. I am just doing this to illustrate the financial situation. Hopefully you understand the salary cap and stuff like that better than this. So you could see right here, $15.7 million signing bonus. That is paid by Cincinnati. That cannot be taken to another team. The Bengals have paid that. It is a sunk cost for them. However, what still hasn't been fully paid out is right here, is the base salary, $16 million. That is paid on a weekly basis, so on a game basis. So say that it's $16 million for Trey Hendrickson. You're going to have to divide that by 17 weeks. That is $941,000 per week. We are down 3 weeks now, right? Say that the 49ers traded for Trey Hendrickson 7 weeks into the season, ahead of the trade deadline. That would mean that Trey Hendrickson will have played at least 6 games for the Cincinnati Bengals. So you multiply 941,000 times 6. That equals $5.64 million. So what you would do is you would take $5.64 million and take that off of the $16 million because the Bengals would have already paid that. That's the proration. 16 minus 5.6, well, that's going to be about $10 million. So back to the salary cap sheet that I put up there for San Francisco. If Nick Bosa with the salary cap insurance effectively only takes up $13 million from the cap this year, and the 49ers have $40 million to spend, and they need to keep it above $30 million to carry over into next year, all of a sudden Trey Hendrickson would fit in the 49ers salary cap window. Now, I know I was basing that on like 4 or 5 hypotheticals, but I'm using this as a chance to illustrate how finances in the National Football League work. And we can get further into prorations and signing bonus willingness. And I mean, the way as a football team that you can stretch out salary cap hits over several years, the way that you could do what the 49ers have done to play this game of surfing the wave of the rising salary cap is if you're willing to give out signing bonuses, if you're willing to pay up front for a lot of these contracts, because those can then be amortized against the salary cap over 5 years. So when I then go back to the news of the day, the 49ers agreeing to sell another 3+% of their team, raising $200+ million in the process. They've raised over $800 million now over the course of the past 4 months. You got VC money coming into the 49ers. This increases their spending power. The spending power then can be used to keep salary cap hits low in the near term, and then the 49ers can ride that wave of salary cap inflation. They can also purchase insurance policies like they did on Nick Bosa's contract to allow them to further duck under the salary cap in situations like this. Again, $7 million saved for Bosa, about $3.5 million saved with the Brandon Ayuk contract insurance last year after he missed 10 games with the torn ACL. So that's how the 49ers are operating financially. Again, here, this is the salary cap sheet. If you have any questions about it, let me know. What I do want you to check out for sure, though, is today's finally good injury news coming out of the 49ers building. Brock Purdy looks to be on track to start for the 49ers on Sunday against Jacksonville. Look, we even were able to get the Brock Purdy, Brian Robinson Jr. handshake. We could put this bigger up on the screen. This was cool. Purdy and Robinson were working on their handshake. This gives you an idea of the lightheartedness at 49ers practice. I thought Brock Purdy was in a jovial mood today. And we know that Kendrick Bourne and Ricky Pearsall have their own handshake. Well, I guess that Purdy and Robinson, looks like they still have some work to do. Kyle Juszczyk is having a laugh about it. Brock Purdy chuckling about it too. Looks like that one's not ready for game day yet, but it is something that the 49ers should continue working on, since we do expect Brock Purdy to be in uniform for them on Sunday if things continue going well in his recovery from the toe injury. Purdy, as you can tell, now taking handoffs, giving them to the RB1 on the day. That is Brian Robinson Jr. Christian McCaffrey today had the day off. It was a vet day off for Christian. We also saw DeMarcus Robinson out on that field for the 49ers. Quick pass from Purdy to Robinson during warm-up. So just wanted to show you some of the stuff that we saw. I wrote this entire piece on the Standard talking about the explosive play rate that the 49ers are trying to increase. 7.8% right now. We're going to monitor that. It ranks number 24 in the entire NFL. You know, it's amazing to me that this team is 3-0 despite the fact that they've got an explosive play rate that ranks number 24 in the NFL. Their average wide receiver separation ranks number 28. They are negative turnover differential, -1. The 49ers don't have a single interception yet this year, and they also have all of this money on the sideline right now. Not necessarily on injured reserve, although Bosa is going to be headed to IR. That's going to start to accumulate the money on injured reserve. But the 49ers have so many things seemingly conspiring against them, yet they've still somehow find a way to get the 3-0. And there is very little that is more valuable than that, the ability to win gritty in this league, because this is a grimy league. This is a league where there's a lot of parity, where games are often decided by 7 or fewer points. I think, you know, the margin that Vegas puts out there in a spread when they don't know what the hell's going to happen is 4.5. You know, so many games seem to be decided between 4 and 7 points, less than that too. You have field goal kickers are obviously very important. That's why the 49ers made a change at that position. But when 3 or 4 plays a game seem to always swing the outcome in one direction or the other, it is such a high leverage league. When that is the case, the ability to grit your teeth and deliver in those high leverage moments is probably the most valuable skill that you can have as not only an NFL team, but as individuals in the NFL, guys who can come through in the clutch at those high leverage moments. And so far, the 49ers have proven that they have those types of players. In week 1, it was Nick Bosa, which is why Nick Bosa is such a big loss. Jake Tonjes and Brock Purdy both delivered ahead of Nick Bosa in that game, but Bryce Huff delivered in Bosa's role week 2 to finish the game against the New Orleans Saints. Mac Jones made some big throws on 3rd down. Those were the high leverage plays in the Big Easy. And then in week 3 against the Cardinals, I mean, it was every phase of the game delivered for San Francisco. Fred Warner defensively, Michael Williams defensively, Upton Stout defensively. 49ers don't win if he doesn't make that play. Offensively, Mac Jones drove the 49ers down the field. Several different receivers. It wasn't just force-feeding Ricky Pearsall, although he was the guy that caught the 4th and 2. That was the highest leverage play up to that point, at least in the game. But on the final drive, after the interception, after Jones had tried to force one into Pearsall, he had to throw to Sky Moore. He had to throw twice to Kendrick Bourne. He had to throw to Jake Tonjes. All of those guys delivered in crunch time. I'm telling you, this is not normal. Like, if you look at the statistics for the 49ers, they should not be tied together with an undefeated record. Negative turnover differential shouldn't be tied together with an undefeated record. The point differential, they're just a little bit above 0 in point differential, shouldn't be tied with an undefeated record. No interceptions. You wouldn't expect that to be tied to the number 6 DVOA defense, but it is, because they're delivering at spots that matter. Upton Stout is a great example. Fred Warner with the blitz where he knocked away the pass from Kyler Murray the other day is another great example. So the 49ers are doing this clutch stuff, which I think is not just luck. I think that some teams have the grit and some teams don't. They're getting it done on that front. And now I really expect them to round into form statistically as well, at least on the offensive side of the ball, because that's where Purdy is going to be returning. That's where Jawan Jennings will be returning. That's where Brandon Ayuk eventually will be returning. That's where Demarcus Robinson is already back at practice. They're going to have a full arsenal. They're not running the football well either. And I think that's a byproduct of not being explosive down the field, because defenses are not incentivized to get after these get out of these 5-man fronts. So it's a long season. And the 49ers right now are not the team that they're going to be in November and December and at the end of this season. And we're not exactly sure what type of team they'll be, but we do know what their blueprint is. We do know what the goals have to be so that they can reach the pinnacle of this sport. And it's elite offense is what they're going to have to eventually bring to the table. They're not there right now. They're number 13 or number 14 EPA. But again, the guy up on your screen, Brock Purdy, will be making his return soon. And that, I think, is the biggest part of the puzzle for the 49ers to get to where they need to be. All right, let's answer some questions. We got over 1,000 in here. I love it. Good stuff. Big show Wednesday night. Time to answer all of the good questions. Yeah, I wonder when Malik Mustafa comes back. It could be week 6 as well for Malik. So remember that the Rams game is past the PUP return window, right? The guys on PUP like Ayuk and Mustafa have to be out at least 4 weeks, 4 games. And the Rams game is week 5, but that's going to be next Thursday, and the 49ers are not going to have a full practice ahead of it. So they're not going to open up the practice windows next week. But week 6 is when you could really start talking about the possibility of Ayuk and Mustafa back. And I would think that maybe Mustafa is a little bit ahead of Ayuk, even though he tore his ACL later. Mustafa had a clean tear. Brandon Ayuk did not. There was also some MCL and I believe some meniscus damage for Brandon Ayuk. So that's been a longer recovery, although he is out on that practice field moving fairly well. Dominic asks, and thank you, say that the money part of it works out. The money part of your chat definitely worked out. Thank you for the super chat. But what would the trade assets be that the 49ers have to include for Trey Hendrickson? I think you're talking about Trey Hendrickson. A lot of that's up to Cincinnati. First, they got to want to trade him, and they're 2-1 right now. So, I would hold your horses on that. Let's wait to see if the Bengals even go into sell mode. But say that they just started losing all their games and they did want to conduct a fire sale for Trey Hendrickson. It was a 2nd-round pick and a 3rd-round pick that the Rams traded for Von Miller back in 2021. That was a 31-year-old Von Miller. This is a 30-year-old Trey Hendrickson who's coming off the league in sacks for 2 straight seasons, 17 and a half last year. Tim Kawakami, who writes for us at the Standard, he had a really good piece on this the other day. He gave a conditional trade proposal, one where the 49ers would only give up very premium capital, like a 1st-round pick plus like a 3rd-round pick for 2027. They would only give that up if Trey Hendrickson played at least 60% of snaps, the team made the playoffs, and Trey Hendrickson re-signed with the 49ers. I don't even know if the 49ers would be interested in re-signing somebody who's going to be 31 next year. I think they're probably more interested in the rental aspect of this. So Tim then went downward with the trade capital in the offer. And he said, well, if he doesn't re-sign with the 49ers, the conditional part of this could be 2nd-round pick plus maybe a 2 and a 3, kind of like the Von Miller trade for the Rams in 2021. But you still put that 60% of snap load condition on it to protect yourself if you're the 49ers, if a team like the Bengals would say yes. Then the 3rd condition, like you're just de-escalating this. If Trey Hendrickson doesn't play 60% of snaps, if he just gets hurt, right, and he's not available to deliver for the 49ers, or if they don't make the playoffs, how do you protect yourself if you're San Francisco and you're trying to amass as much draft capital in the future so you don't want to lose a ton of efficiency going after a 30-year-old edge rusher? Well, Tim proposed just a 3rd-round pick or I forgot exactly what it was, but it was very, very relatively low commitment compared to the first level of the conditions. it was to the point where I was like, well, the Bengals probably won't go for that. The Bengals are going to want some more guaranteed compensation in return. But that's why you would negotiate over the course of October. And that's why both teams have to be in a position where they'd actually want something to get done. Right now, the Bengals, I don't see why they would want anything to get done. They're 2-1. Hell, maybe they even try to trade for Russell Wilson since Joe Burrow is out for 3 months or so with his turf toe. But the Bengals should not be in fire sale mode, and I don't think the 49ers should be in adding mode right now. They need to see what they have first, and it takes two to tango, and maybe two will be ready to tango by the time that mid-October rolls around. Can the 49ers afford Brian Burns' contract? Only asking Mr. Lombardi because Richard Sherman mentioned him at the right price. All right, well, why don't we look? Good question. Good question from a regular viewer. The Brian Burns contract, I would like to see. I haven't looked at all the finances of all these deals yet because there are a lot of names out there, and I don't know who's going to be available and who's not. But let's see what Brian Burns is at over in Carolina. Who Burns is under contract through 2028. This is a longer-term deal that the 49ers would have to inherit. So, I'm going to toss this up on the screen for you. I appreciate the super chat. Thank you. Let me take a screenshot and then copy and paste this to be able to toss this up there. And we could then dissect this contract line by line just to help you understand how this kind of stuff works. How contract absorption, I guess we can call it, works in the NFL. All right, I've got it ready for you. Here you go. So this is Brian Burns' contract with the Carolina Panthers. Signed in 2024. You could see that we're in the 2025 season where they've kept the base salary low. They paid him a $51 million signing bonus, which is prorated over the course of the deal, as you can see here, $11 million in each season. The signing bonus, that is something that the original team must own. There's no way out of it for them. That is committed money. What another team would absorb is not in this column, it's in this column. It's in the base salary column. So say that Brian Burns was traded this year, it would actually be a low number for Brian Burns. It'd be a really, really low number because $6.25 million base salary, but it'd be prorated. You'd probably only be giving up about $3 to $4 million on base salary plus and not even the workout bonus that belongs to the Carolina Panthers. So this year, Brian Burns would be cheap. The thing is that in 2026, you'd owe everything except for this second column with $11 million. You owe all of the base salary, $22.25 million, and that would be fully guaranteed. So you'd be absorbing a big number in year two, although wouldn't be a massive, massive number since Carolina already picked up the signing bonus. I just don't see why Carolina would be incentivized to trade a player who's still really in his mid-20s right now, 27 in 2025, and who still is under contractual control through 2028. There's a whole heck of a lot of value here for Carolina. So I know that Richard went out and mentioned maybe the 49ers should try to trade for somebody like Burns, but I don't see the incentive at all. Even if the Panthers aren't good this year, it's hard to see why they would want to move on from an edge rusher who's still young, who's on, I think, a relatively team-friendly deal for them, since they've already paid that signing bonus anyway. It's only the base salaries moving forward. They would make another team very, very happy if that other team could absorb his contract. And I suppose that the Panthers made the 49ers very, very happy when they sent Christian McCaffrey San Francisco's way, and the 49ers only had to pay the base salary and not the signing bonus after all that was restructured. That was one of the great trades in NFL history. Hard to believe in retrospect that people were criticizing that Christian McCaffrey trade, but you can see what the internet knows. Not much in that situation. It was one of the best trades the 49ers could have ever made, and they only paid him like $700,000 in that first year, and he was a complete transformer for San Francisco's offense. Oh, Burns on the Giants, sorry. So still, same principle. I know that he went from the Panthers to the Giants, but the same principle applies here when you look at the contract for Brian Burns. Even if the Giants are terrible this year, why would they move on from somebody who has a contract that is, it looks like a dream for the team, right? I mean, you look at this, that they got him in at a long-term deal. This is not something that you'd want to offload. These are manageable base salaries. The signing bonus has already been paid. He's under team control through age 30. These are the prime years of his contract. I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, somebody like Kayvon Thibodeau with the Giants, who was already with this team before this regime, entering the 5th-year option next year, if he's not in their long-term plans, although he's been playing better football this year than in the past, somebody like Kayvon Thibodeau, that's a potential player who they could move on from if they continue sliding here. And the Giants have begun this season 0-3. So, again, we're just tossing names out there. It doesn't even matter what team these guys are on. It's like we're tossing names out there. We're looking at contracts. We're taking a look at what dynamics might be in play. And once the time comes, like mid-October rolls around and teams start having a better idea of if they're buying or selling, that's when you could start zeroing in on the actual trade compensation and trade dynamic situation of the specific teams. At week 3, everybody still has hope. Even if you're the Giants, even if you've already switched your quarterback from Russell Wilson to Jackson Dart, this point of the season, you're not in fire sale mode. So you just arm yourself financially. You create the cap space that you need to create to absorb a potential trade right now, but you can't really be set on a specific target until you know that target's going to be available, because it does take 2 to tango. All right, I'm ready for some more questions. 1K viewers, baby. We're doing well on a Wednesday night. Leroy thinks the Giants will be sellers by week 6, but they won't be sellers of that Burns contract. You know, it doesn't matter what team Brian Burns is on. That's why I got him confused with the Panthers, because I remember those days. It doesn't matter what team Brian Burns is on. That contract is favorable for Brian Burns and the team. Like, it's a good deal. The team's not going to want to give up team control. That's too important of a position. He's going to be a cornerstone for that team moving forward. They've already paid the signing bonus. That's, you know, teams will go through sunk cost fallacy with things like this, even if it might not be the right play. It's Thibodeau who's the candidate to be traded from the Giants if they continue sliding moving forward. Will we see the Hulk play at all? I think that the 49ers will actually have to have some injuries at defensive tackle to first. They would open the door for Jordan Jefferson, and then Sebastian Valdez, the Hulk, is behind him. I think at some point you're going to see him. I think that attrition is natural over the course of an NFL season. And at this point, you know, you look at Sebastian Valdez and you say he's developing. They've got some quality in-house depth. He's on the practice squad, and his opportunity, given the rate that things are going, not just with the 49ers, but across the whole league, his opportunity will come at some point. Mike asks, the data that we have on the 49ers defense so far, do we throw it out the window with Nick Bosa gone? Well, the data that we have is their number 6 DVOA. They've been a top 10 defense so far. I don't think you throw it out the window. Bosa's one of 11 players. He might be one of the more impactful players or most impactful players on that defense. But a lot of what San Francisco has done so far has not just been through Nick Bosa. Fred Warner's made big plays. He's still available. Bryce Huff, Mykel Williams is surging every week. I think that we're going to look at data splits. Like, you know, the first 3 games are in the books. One reason that I don't want to toss out the first 3 games is because Bosa exited early in week 3, and the 49ers defense still got the job done. So there's some credit that needs to be given there. The reason I bring that up is because in 2024, when Bosa got hurt, the defense fell off a cliff immediately against Seattle. They didn't hold up for the rest of the game. So I think that this defense has juice without Bosa. I definitely don't think they're as good without Bosa, but I do think that they deserve some credit for what they've done outside of number 97 so far this year. It's going to be a fascinating year of data analysis, because we will be looking at some of those splits to determine just how good the 49ers are now that Nick Bosa is going to be headed to injured reserve. Data on opponents' records. Well, actually, out of the undefeated teams so far this year, the combined records the combined record of the teams that the undefeated teams have beaten this year, the 49ers have faced the best record of opponents. And they played the Seahawks and they played the Cardinals, both of whom have winning records, and they played the Saints, who are 0-3. So it adds up to 4-5, I believe. But the point is that you can only look at whom the 49ers have played so far, and they've done fine. There was a projection this offseason that the 49ers would have an easier schedule because it's a last place schedule. But you could toss that out the window, since one of the teams on that last place schedule is the Indianapolis Colts. And the Indianapolis Colts are way better than anybody expected. That's just one example. Jacksonville, I think, is playing better football than a lot of people expected. They're 2-1 entering this game. They're number 2 defensively. It doesn't seem like that easy of a schedule once you actually start playing NFL games. Schedule stuff, that's week discussion for college football fans. No offense to college football, but there are games every week in that level of play that should not be scheduled. Like Alabama plays Mercer. There are 45-point spreads in college football. The NFL doesn't tolerate that. The NFL, everybody's good in the NFL. So even the worst team has the chance to beat the best team on any given day. And because of that, you can't look at a schedule and say that it's easy, because every single week in the NFL is a dogfight. All right, everybody, thank you for watching. It's been a lot of fun. Big Money 49ers update. They have now raised over $800 million over the course of the past 4 months. Hopefully, I explained the salary cap situation well for you. If you have any other questions, drop them into the comment section. Really appreciate it. Crossed 1,000 live viewers on this beautiful Wednesday night. Set your alarms for tomorrow morning.